My name is Jida. In this video, I'm going to tell you the total cost of the USMLE journey. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So I'm going to be sharing my slides. Now, so in this video, I'm going to be telling you the total cost of the USMLE journey. So the cost is not just, financial cost. Financial cost is the highlight of this video. However, there's a cost of studying, which is the academic cost you have to be aware of. The cost of doing research. The cost of networking. The cost of networking, that's making connections, going the extra mile to make connections, try to meet program directors, make connections in the system. The cost of building your CV, activities that will build your CV, maybe a hobby, volunteering, things like that. Then I also talk about the payout, so you have an idea of whether it's worth it in the end. All right. Okay, so now the first cost is passport application. Now, a lot of people watching this video already have passports. We have some won't. Now you have to have your passport, international passports, to apply for ECFMG certification, which is the first step in the process. So the cost of passports in Nigeria, which is where I am, it ranges from 30,000 naira to 130,000 naira, which converts to $19.6 to $85, depending on different options. All right. In the US, it ranges from $165 to $195. In India, it ranges from 1,500 Indian rupees to 4,000 Indian rupees, which converts to $17.5 to $47. That's the cost of that. You have to get a passport. Obviously, if you rented your passport, that is not one of the costs of the USMLE journey. But if you don't have one and you are getting a passport because of the USMLE, then you can count passport as one of the costs of the USMLE journey. All right. Well, the application for ECFMG certification, which costs $160. Now, during this process, you'll be notarized. What do I mean by that? You'll book an online session with notary cam. Your passport photograph will be taken online, and your international passports, a photo will also be taken online. So this to verify your identity. It costs about $160. In the process, you will get to USMLE ID. Now, having done that, move to the cost of step 1 exam. And the cost of step 1 exam can be broken down to the cost of preparation for the exam, the exam fees itself, then the cost of transport and lodging when you go for the exam. All right. So the cost of preparing for the exam, one of the resources you use is first aid. Now, if you have watched my video on how to prepare for step 1 on this channel, you know that first aid is one of the resources that is highly, acclaimed for preparing for USMLE step 1. Now, it costs about $30 to $80 depending on whether you get a hard copy or soft copy version. So that's the cost. UWorld is almost considered as the gold standard for step 1, though Amboss is also almost equally as good as UWorld. Now, the cost of UWorld subscription is $479 for 6 months and $579 for a 12-month subscription. So depending on which you go for, that amazes the cost. And the cost of Boards and Beyond. Boards and Beyond is also a video series that I recommend in my video on how I prepare for step 1. Now, the cost, depending on the plan you go for, ranges from $0 where you don't even use Boards and Beyond to $249 where you use the 1-year plan. However, the plan I feel most people will go for is the 6-month plan, which costs about $199. Now, Sketchy is also another great resource for step 1. Now, you may decide to go for it or not. If you don't go for it, obviously it won't cost you anything. If you decide to go for Sketchy, now, if you have a 6-month plan, 12-month plan, we won't have a 2 years plan. However, I believe most people will go for the 6-month plan, which will cost about $349. So this range is for the 1 year. Like this $449 is for the 1-year plan. So, but I guess on average, it will cost $349. Now, Patoma is another great resource that you can use. You don't have to use it. You use it. It's going to cost you about $85 for the 6-month subscription and $100 for the 1 year subscription. So I guess most people that will go for it will probably go for the $5 option. Now, they have the NBMEs. NBME stands for National Board of Medical Examiners, and these are exams written by the body that says the USMLE step 1 to test your readiness for the exam. If you watch my video on how to prepare for step 1, you will realize that it's very important you do the NBMEs. Now, they cost $62 per form. Now for step 1, we have about 11 forms. However, I believe the forms are online forms are 25 to 31, which are about 7 forms. So 7 times 52 will to give $434. So depending on how many of the forms you decide to do, you decide not to pay for the forms, or you decide to pay for the forms. Each cost is $2, and depending on how many you do, up to a maximum of 7. So it could cost you from $0 to $434. And the cost of the USMLE step 1, as I time of recording this video, is $1,020. Now, if you are outside the US or Canada, you're going to pay a surcharge, which is $205, which is like the cost of bringing the exam out of the United States or Canada. Alright, so if you're in Nigeria, for instance, in India, you're going to pay that $205. And if you're in India, the Indian government, there's a 18% tax that's attributable to the Indian government. So you're going to pay this one directly to the Indian government. So 18% of $120, which is the USMLE step 1 cost, should be about $184. But this cost is unique to Indians, alright? Then transport and lodgings. Now, depending on the country you are, there may be a center in your country or not. For instance, I'm in Nigeria, there is no center to ready USMLE in Nigeria currently, so I had to go to Ghana. Now, there's a whole lot: flights, lodgings, feeding. But I just and for this video, I just give it a range of $0 to $2,000, depending on where you are, depending on how you travel, whether it's by flight or by road, depending on how many days you stay in wherever. For instance, if I put $0 here, if someone lives in the US, for instance, and he lives close to a test center, he won't spend anything on transport and lodging. He can literally wake up from the house, go to the exam venue on Thursday, and take the exam without paying a dime for transport or lodgings. While if you are staying a bit far, how far you live from the nearest test center to you determines the cost you want to pay. So I gave it a range of $0 to $2,000. So in total, the total cost of step 1, the minimum possible cost you could pay is $1,020, and that's if you're a US citizen, even close to a test venue, and you don't spend on any resource, which is very difficult. It's very difficult. However, it's possible if you are using friends' resources. But so the minimum possible is $1,020. Taking the maximum amount I put on this slide is about around $5,155. So an average person, I guess, will spend somewhere in between that, which is around $2,500 for step 1. And then we'll move to the cost of step 2. We have our first aid, $30 to $80. Reward, $479 to $579. Ambos, $20 to $250. Now, this depends on the kind of subscription you will go for. So we have the clinician subscriptions and the student subscription. For the clinician subscription, if you're going to pay for the yearly charge, it costs about $21.6 per month. So multiplied by a year. Now, if you go for the clinician plan that is charged monthly, as they charge you every month, depend until you cancel, it's about $30 per month. So just in case you go for that clinician plan that is charged $30 per month, and you by any reason whatsoever you use it for 12 months, that'll be $260, but that is very unlikely. You're not likely to prepare for step 2 longer than 6 months. All right, so this $260 is a very unlikely. What is more likely is for you to choose a student plan, and the student plan costs about give me a moment. Yeah, charged yearly, paying monthly $20 per month. So it'd be easy for 6 months. That'll be 20 times 6, about $120. So it could cost you $120. Using Ambos for 6 months using a student plan. However, if you pay the yearly subscription, that'll be 12.5 per month times 12. So it's all a range of depending on your choice. So, but it can cost as little as $20 if you use it for only a month, to as much as $360. Okay, so CMS forms, clinical mastery forms. If you watch my step 2 video, I threw more light on what CMS forms are. But basically, they cost $20 per form. And if you use all the relevant forms, you may spend up to $500. But most people will likely not pay for all the CMS forms. Also taking note of the fact that you may be able to find some CMS forms online. offline CML forms, but you pay for the online version and it costs up to $500. But depending on how many you decide to take. Again, if you want to know more about CML forms, watch my step 2 video. And the MBME is $60, $62 per form. I've already talked about what MBMEs are when I talked about the cost of step 1. So cost from somewhere between $0 if you don't take any online MBME to $434. USMLE step 2 cost again is $120. Now the surcharge for step 2 is a bit higher than that for step 1, it's $130. I'm guessing it's due to the longer duration of the exam, but it's $130. If you're in India, again, the same 18% tax applies to you, $704. Transport and lodging is the same thing I talked about when I talked about step 1. So in total, everything comes to somewhere between $1,500 to $5. Now, the minimum here is $1,500 you notice, because there's no way you can prep for step 2 without a question bank. So for step 1, there's possibility of maybe sharing a friend, but for step 2 is question bank intensive. You also notice that you add ambush to my step 1 area cost, but I added it to step 2 because in step 2 you may end up doing both keyword and ambush like I did. I did both keyword, I did both ambush. So you most likely have to spend on a question bank among other spending. So the minimum likely you spend for step 2 is likely somewhere around $1,500, and the maximum you can possibly spend is somewhere around $5,107. I guess an average person may spend about $2,000 to $2,500 on the step 2. So the OET. Now, OET stands for Occupational English Test, is compulsory for you to get ECFMG licensed. Costs about $455. Now, depending on where you are, if you are in a place where there's a OET test center close to you, we don't spend anything on transport. But if you are far from an OET test center, you will need to spend more. So, but the minimum cost you spend on OET is $455, but it will likely be more than this, depending on if you are transporting yourself to the journey. So after you've gotten your step 1, step 2 OET, next thing is to apply for ECFMG certification or license. Now the application fee is now at $25. Now during the process, you'll be requested to send in your USMLE transcript to cost you $80. Now you also, if you're not in the US, Canada, you will be required to also send in a certificate of good standing from your medical council. So as a Nigerian, our hours cost about $390,000. Sorry, 390,000 naira to get a certificate of good standing, which comes to $255. Then you also apply to your dean to send your transcripts and to approve you as a student of your school. I mean, the dean of the medical school. Now I put here ×2 and I put 100,000 because I didn't put this course in step 1, but when you apply for step 1, you will need to do this. You need to apply for a medical school transcript and certificate to be sent to USMLE, and your school may charge. My school, the University of Nigeria, charged me 50,000 naira for that. So that's one charge. Then when you're applying for this ECFMG licensing, you need to apply for that again from your dean. So 2 charges, that'll be 100,000, which comes about $65. Obviously, it will be different from different schools and different countries. Then you also need to buy the MyEras token, which licenses you or gives you the ability to apply for the match in the particular cycle you are going for. That will cost about $165. Totals $1,490, about $1,500. Now, step 3 is not compulsory. It's not a compulsory course. However, we said that to increase your chances of matching, you may decide to take step 3 before you apply for the match. Test aid for step 3, somewhere between $6 to $54. Obviously, you must not use it. Rewards $429 to $579. CCF case. Now, CCF cases are highly recommended for step 3. All right, the question in CCF cases are in the format of the USMLE step 3. Highly recommended. So most people usually go with the $70 3-month plan, but you may go up to $100. MBME is $62 per form. There are not as much MBMEs for step 3 as for other forms. So the maximum you can spend on MBME for step 3 is $186. USMLE step 3 will cost you about $935. Transport and logistics. Now, I didn't bother to put a particular fee to the transport and logistics because for IMGs, we'll have to travel to the US. Step 3 is only taken in the US. All right. So I don't know how much it will cost you to travel to the US, or you may already be in the US. So if you're already in the US, you're not spending transport costs on you. So the total minimum you spend is somewhere around $1,500. That's the step 3 cost, the cost of the award, CCS cases and also. So for $100 and the maximum you spend, I can't really give an estimate for that because it depends on your circumstances. And the match application itself, to apply for residency, you want to pay $11 per program for the first 30 programs you apply for, and $30 per program for the rest. So if you're applying for, let's say, 50 programs, that will be around 930 programs or so, $930 or so, if I remember correctly. But for 100 programs, it will cost about $2,430 dollars. So NRMP stands for National Residency Match Program. You're going to pay $70 for the first 20 programs you decide to rank. If you rank more than 20 programs, you're going to pay more than that. In total, it may cost about $2,500 or more, as if you apply for $100 plus the around NRP $70 costs, $2,500 or more. Now, when you eventually get matched, you have to get a G1 visa, which at the time of recording this video costs about $590. There may be some other costs associated with getting a visa, but this is the standard fee of $590. Now, US clinical experience is also another point that is really that increase your chances of matching. So you may choose to do it to improve your chances. Now, it's better to get up to 3 electives because in those 3 electives, you'll be able to get 3 letters of recommendation from a US physician. Letters of recommendations are in cadres. Letters of recommendation from US physicians is worth more than a letter of recommendation from your home country by an IMG. So if you can do good for US clinical experience, get a letter of recommendation from US physicians, that would be beautiful. So it costs around $1,500 for elective. It's not a fixed cost. Different elective programs have different costs, but the average around $1,500. If you're in Nigeria, a round trip flights will cost about $3,000. Visiting an accommodation for 3 months may cost somewhere around $1,000. So in total, going for elective may cost somewhere around $8,500. Obviously, it's not a fixed price. If you go for only one elective, it will cost much less. If you don't go for elective, you're not going to spend this money. Research will be free or it could be paid. There are some programs where you pay and you are taught how to research and you have about maybe 4 papers or something like that. Or you can form a research group and research on your own. And people in the research group will contribute because when you research, you have to publish and some journals charge for publishing. So you have to grade that course. Only the people that, if you're a group that do the research together, you guys can pull in money and the cost can be less. So I just put this possibly up to $1,000 as the possible maximum you can ever spend on research, but probably be much less than this. Networking, there's no fixed financial cost about it. It's all about attending conferences, webinars, connecting on LinkedIn, Twitter. That will take you time. That's why I put as a cost. You have to work with a personal statement or CV. You may decide to pay people to write it for you to get a professional feel. We also want to do things that will build your CV, outreaches, building a hobby. So these are hidden costs. Now, interview, when you eventually get an interview after you apply for the match, your interview might be online or physical. Nowadays, most programs give you the opportunity for online interview. But however, if it's a physical interview, obviously if you're in Nigeria, you have to travel. And again, the round trip cost of traveling is about $3,000 from Nigeria. But hopefully, we can avoid this particular cost. So in total, the total cost of the USMLE journey, the minimum I expect someone to spend saving all possible costs somewhere around $8,000. Right, the maximum I expect someone to spend is somewhere around $30,000. So on average, maybe an average person may spend up to $15,000 on the USMLE journey. Now, what's the residency for a PGY1 resident? A PGY1 resident, that's the first year resident in America, the salary is somewhere between $60,000 to $78,000 a year. Well, when you're done with the residency, the salary is above $200,000. All right, so is it worth it? I feel it's worth it. So with this video, I've been able to tell you, give an idea of the total cost of the USMLE. But I want you to don't despair. Don't despair. These payments will take a period of time over 1 to 2 years. When you apply for step 1 to apply for step 2, so it's something that can be done gradually. You must not have the money in bulk. It's something that can be done gradually, actually with help from family and friends and all. So this is the cost. If you like videos on USMLE content, please like and subscribe to this channel so you get a notification on when I drop the next video. See you.